A powerful winter storm swept across Ontario, bringing rapidly intensifying snowfall, strong winds, and travel conditions that shifted from manageable to dangerous in a very short time. What began as an early season system quickly turned into a major weather challenge for communities across the province. Forecasters reported that parts of the region were preparing for snowfall totals reaching up to 50 centimeters, with localized amounts climbing even higher in the traditional snowbelt zones. As the storm strengthened, the combination of heavy snow and unstable wind patterns created conditions that demanded immediate attention from residents and officials alike. Through the morning hours, colder air pushed southward and fueled the development of widespread precipitation across the province. The storm deepened as it moved over the Great Lakes, allowing lake-effect streamers to form and intensify. These streamers produced narrow but extremely powerful corridors of snowfall that moved unpredictably, creating abrupt changes in visibility for drivers and anyone traveling outdoors. Roadways that appeared passable only minutes earlier quickly became snow-covered, slick, and nearly impossible to navigate safely. The sense of urgency grew as reports came in from multiple communities experiencing sudden whiteouts and rapidly deepening drifts. In areas near Georgian Bay and along the well-known snowbelt, meteorologists warned that lake-effect bands were capable of dropping as much as 7 centimeters of snow per hour during peak activity. These bursts created conditions that overwhelmed both residents and road maintenance crews. Snow drifted across open highways, burying lane markings and covering intersections. Travel advisories spread across the region as authorities urged residents to avoid unnecessary trips and to remain aware that road closures could occur with little to no warning. Farther inland, northern communities around the Durham region and several rural areas north of the Greater Toronto area were placed under winter storm warnings as steady snowfall continued throughout the day. Forecasts indicated that many of these areas could receive between 30 and 50 centimeters of fresh snow before the storm ended. Even locations expecting lower totals still experienced strong winds sweeping snow across fields and roadways. Drivers reported that routine commutes turned into long and unpredictable journeys, marked by rapidly shifting visibility and sudden stretches of icy pavement. In the Greater Toronto area, snowfall amounts were generally lighter compared to regions farther north, but the storm still produced significant hazards. Gusty winds combined with recurring squalls created pockets of near-zero visibility, especially in neighborhoods near the lakeshore. Residents were advised to stay indoors whenever possible, monitor local alerts, and prepare for further interruptions as the storm moved into the weekend. What began as a typical winter event had escalated into a province-wide challenge affecting both urban centers and rural communities. Officials emphasized that caution remained essential until the storm fully passed. They encouraged residents to check on vulnerable neighbors, conserve heating resources during power interruptions, and avoid unnecessary travel until roads could be cleared. With wind patterns still shifting and lake effect development ongoing, the risk of rapid deterioration in weather conditions remained significant. As the storm persisted into Saturday, the full extent of its impact continued to unfold. Cleanup efforts would take time, and restoration crews expected to work through the weekend. Winter storms are a familiar part of life in Ontario, but the severity and unpredictability of this early season system served as a reminder of how quickly conditions can change. Residents were urged to stay alert, follow official guidance, and take all necessary precautions until the final snow bands moved away from the province. Utility crews also moved into position, anticipating disruptions to power service. Heavy, wet snow began to accumulate on tree branches and power lines, raising the risk of outages as winds continued to strengthen. By mid-afternoon, minor outages had already been reported in scattered communities. Utility teams emphasized that repair efforts could take longer than usual due to drifting snow, blocked roads, and limited visibility. Residents were encouraged to keep essential supplies on hand, including flashlights, warm clothing, and food items that did not require cooking. Officials noted that even short-term outages could become more serious in homes relying on electric heat during the early season cold. The storm's unusual intensity for this time of year drew attention from weather officials across the province. While early season snow events are not rare in Ontario, the combination of heavy snowfall, unstable wind patterns, and strong lake effect activity created an environment far more volatile than what many communities typically face in the early stages of winter. Forecasters explained that sudden shifts in wind direction could alter snowfall intensity without warning, turning safe conditions into an emergency in a matter of minutes. Throughout Friday and into Saturday, the storm maintained its strength as it continued moving across southern and central Ontario. New snow bands developed in response to shifting winds, striking areas that had previously experienced calmer conditions. Road maintenance crews worked around the clock to clear major routes, but blowing snow repeatedly obscured progress. Drifts piled along fences, rural driveways, and open stretches of farmland, reaching heights that made removal difficult with standard equipment. Residents in the hardest-hit areas described snow accumulating faster than they could clear it. Driveways that had been shoveled early in the day were buried again by afternoon. Rural households faced the possibility of temporary isolation as snowdrifts formed barriers across narrow access roads. In some locations, residents used snowshoes or heavy boots to check on neighbors and elderly family members who might have needed assistance. The community response underscored the seriousness of the storm and the unpredictability of its impacts. As conditions evolved, local officials continued urging people to monitor travel advisories and adjust plans as needed. Transportation authorities warned that plows could not keep pace with the fast-moving lake effect bursts, especially in more remote regions. Rail and bus services prepared for potential delays as snow accumulated on tracks and roadways. The aviation sector also faced challenges from strong crosswinds and rapidly changing visibility, prompting precautionary adjustments to flight schedules. In agricultural regions, heavy snow and powerful gusts added pressure on barns and outbuildings. Farmers monitored livestock closely and secured equipment where possible, anticipating potential structural strain from the weight of accumulating snow. Rural residents also reported concerns about deep drifts blocking access to year-round water sources and feed storage areas. While these hazards were manageable with preparation, they placed additional stress on communities already coping with the broader effects of the storm. As the system progressed, weather officials reiterated the importance of staying informed and prepared for sudden changes. Even when snowfall temporarily eased, the combination of shifting winds and lake effect development meant that dangerous conditions could redevelop quickly. Officials warned that brief improvements in visibility should not be interpreted as a signal that travel was safe. Motorists were reminded that whiteouts could form with little warning when wind direction aligned with shoreline snowbands. By late day, the storm remained one of the strongest early season events to affect southern Ontario in several years. Communities across the province continue to experience disruptions, from power outages to difficult travel conditions. Residents were advised to stay indoors whenever possible, monitor local alerts, and prepare for further interruptions as the storm moved into the weekend. What began as a typical winter event had escalated into a province-wide challenge, affecting both urban centers and rural communities. Officials emphasized that caution remained essential until the storm fully passed. They encouraged residents to check on vulnerable neighbors, conserve heating resources during power interruptions, and avoid unnecessary travel until roads could be cleared. With wind patterns still shifting and lake effect development ongoing, the risk of rapid deterioration in weather conditions remained significant. As the storm persisted into Saturday, the full extent of its impact continued to unfold. Cleanup efforts would take time, and restoration crews expected to work through the weekend. Winter storms are a familiar part of life in Ontario, but the severity and unpredictability of this early season system served as a reminder of how quickly conditions can change. Residents were urged to stay alert, follow official guidance, and take all necessary precautions until the final snow bands moved away from the province.